If you want to know exactly how much your family values you, wait until you lose your job. I didn't have to wait long. It was day 6 of my unemployment, day 6 of living back under my parents' roof, and day 6 of realizing that rent-free is the most expensive way to live. I was summoned to the dining table at 9 a.m. My sister Natalie and my mother Stacy were waiting. On the table wasn't breakfast, it was a laminated spreadsheet. Natalie tapped a manicured nail on the paper. She didn't ask. She informed me. Ashley, since you're home and well, grounding yourself, we've set up a schedule. 45 hours a week, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Childcare, cleaning. Weekend support for the triplets. They called it a blessing. I called it a sentence. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment and let me know what's the most unreasonable favor a family member has ever asked of you. I'm reading every single one. I looked at the spreadsheet. Then I looked at the pristine white dining room. My family lives in what I call the glass house. It's an open-concept nightmare of modern architecture, where sound travels like a bullet and stains are a capital offense. Everything is white. The sofas, the rugs, the quartz, countertops. It is a house designed for Instagram photos, not for 3 feral toddlers. Yet Natalie, my aspiring momfluencer sister, insisted on living here while her own content house was being renovated. I picked up the schedule. It was color-coded. Blue for diaper changes. Green for meal prep. Yellow for enrichment activities. There was no white space, no time for job applications, no time for interviews, just endless unpaid servitude. I stood up. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I just walked back to the guest room, my room, and closed the door. The walls were thin. That's the thing about the glass house. It has no secrets. 5 minutes later, I heard my father, Richard, on the phone in his office next door. He wasn't whispering. He was bragging. Yeah, we saved about $6,000 on the kitchen remodel this month, he said. The labor costs for the kids are sorted. Ashley's taking over the day shift, so we cut the nanny. It works out perfectly. She needs the structure. I froze. The air in the room suddenly felt very cold. This wasn't about helping me get back on my feet. This wasn't about family supporting family during a tough transition. I was a line item. I was a budget cut. They had fired a paid professional because they assumed my time was worthless. They assumed that because I had lost my title as a project manager, I had lost my ability to do math. They were wrong. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the room. It was the smallest room in the house, barely big enough for a twin bed, and my singular suitcase. This was my compensation. $800 worth of square footage in exchange for a 60-hour work week. I didn't go down for dinner. I didn't answer the knock when Natalie came to ask if I could just watch the boys while she steamed her face. I lay in the dark and listened to the house. The chaos of the triplets screaming downstairs. The clatter of dishes. The performative laughter of my parents trying to pretend this arrangement was sustainable. I realized then that I was the only thing standing between them and total collapse. And if I stayed, I would be the mortar in their bricks forever. I would be the invisible glue holding their perfect aesthetic together while I slowly disintegrated. I waited until the house was silent. 3 a.m., the witching hour. I got up and moved with the precision that had made me a very good project manager. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew the layout of this room, my childhood cage, by heart. I pulled my singular suitcase from under the bed. I didn't pack emotionally. I didn't throw things. I packed with the cold efficiency of someone executing a termination of contract. Clothes, laptop, chargers, toiletries. It took exactly 4 minutes. I stripped the bed, I folded the sheets, and placed them in a neat pile at the foot of the mattress. I wiped down the nightstand. I wanted to leave no trace that I had ever been there. I wanted them to wake up to a ghost. I walked downstairs, avoiding the squeaky step on the third tread. The house was breathing around me, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft whir of the HVAC system, expensive noises that I was expected to pay for with my sanity. I walked to the kitchen island, the quartz heart of the glass house. I took a piece of their heavy, cream-colored stationery, the kind my mother used to write thank you notes for gifts she didn't like. I took a black pen. I didn't write a tear-stained letter begging them to love me. I didn't list my grievances. I didn't ask for an apology. I wrote 2 sentences, corporate and cold. Offer declined. Effective immediately. I placed the pen on top of the note. Then I walked out the front door. The night air was cool and smelled of damp lawn and suburban quiet. I got into my car. The engine start sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't check to see if a light flicked on. I put the car in gear and drove. I drove 30 minutes across town to the industrial district to a converted garage studio owned by my friend Blake. We call it the bunker. It's concrete, soundproof, and ugly. It sits between a welding shop and a warehouse that stores tires. It was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. I let myself in using the spare key Blake had given me years ago for emergencies. I locked the heavy steel door behind me. The latch clicked with a sound of absolute finality. I sat on the floor in the dark, and I listened. There were no baby monitors static hissing in the background. No passive-aggressive sighs from the next room. No footsteps approaching my door to ask for a quick favor. Just silence. Heavy industrial silence. That silence was my first weapon. You see, most people think retaliation requires noise. They think you have to fight, to scream, to argue your case until they finally hear you. But I knew the truth about my family. They thrived on noise. If I had stayed and argued about the schedule, I would have been validating their premise. I would have been accepting that my time was theirs to negotiate, that my life was a commodity we could haggle over. By arguing, I would have been participating in the transaction. Silence rejects the premise entirely. Silence is a mirror. When you remove your voice, you remove their fuel. You force them to look at the empty space where you used to be, and for the first time they have to see what you actually did, by the sheer magnitude of what is no longer getting done. I wasn't going to give them a fight. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of calling me dramatic or ungrateful. I was going to give them a vacuum. I was going to give them a void where their safety net used to be. I unrolled an air mattress on the concrete floor. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt the cold, hard clarity of a soldier who has just retreated to higher ground. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 6 days, I didn't dream of crying babies or white furniture stained with guilt. I slept. I woke up at 10 a.m. The sun was cutting through the high industrial windows of the bunker, illuminating dust motes dancing in the silence. It was cold and the air smelled of stale coffee and metal, but to me it smelled like freedom. I made a cup of black coffee on Blake's hot plate. Then I sat at the makeshift desk, a piece of plywood on 2 sawhorses, and opened my laptop. I didn't open my email to look for job rejections. I didn't check LinkedIn. I opened a fresh blank spreadsheet. I titled it, "The Cost of Love." It was time to do the math. You see, when you are the reliable sibling, you are conditioned to think that counting the cost is petty. You are taught that family transactions should be emotional, not financial. But I was a project manager. My entire career was built on the principle that if you cannot quantify it, you cannot manage it. So I started quantifying. I pulled up the local market rates for nannies in our area. For a professional with experience handling 3 toddlers under the age of 4, the going rate was $25 an hour. That was the base. I started inputting the data into my columns. Base labor 45 hours a week at $25 an hour. That's $1,125 a week. But the schedule Natalie had laminated didn't just ask for 9 to 5. It demanded early mornings. It demanded weekends. In the corporate world, that is called overtime. I added a multiplier. Time and a half for anything over 40 hours. Double time for Sundays. Then came the add-ons. Meal preparation for a family of 5, with specific dietary restrictions. That's a private chef surcharge. Housekeeping for a 4-bedroom open-concept home. That's a cleaning fee. Crisis management for tantrums. That's hazard pay. I built a formula that would make a CFO weep. I plugged in every single hour they had demanded on that color-coded schedule. The total monthly value of the labor they demanded came to $4,500. Then I looked at the other side of the ledger, the compensation. I calculated the value of what they were offering me. A 10 by 10 guest room in the suburbs with shared bathroom access. I looked up comparable rentals in their neighborhood. Generously with utilities and internet, included the market value was $800 a month. I subtracted the rent from the labor. The deficit was $3,700 a month. I stared at that number. It blinked back at me, black and absolute. This is the trap of normalization. It is the economic version of gaslighting. Families use words like pitching in or helping out or earning your keep to mask what is essentially wage theft. They rely on the emotional contract to override the economic reality. They tell you that love shouldn't have a price tag while simultaneously putting a price tag on your shelter. They frame your exploitation as an opportunity, making you feel grateful for the chance to be used. My father, the man who prided himself on his business acumen, hadn't offered me a safety net. He was running a sweatshop and paying me in guilt. He was leveraging my vulnerability, my job loss, my fear of the future to extract thousands of dollars of labor for pennies on the dollar. It wasn't just unfair, it was predatory. And now that I saw the number, I couldn't unsee it. The guilt I had felt walking out the door vanished. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. It was the precise fury of a balance sheet that doesn't add up. I realized then that I wasn't a daughter to them right now. I was a high-yield asset they had acquired for free, and my departure wasn't a family tragedy, it was a liquidity crisis. I saved the spreadsheet. I named the file Invoice Draft 1. I closed the laptop. Then I took a deep breath and turned on my phone. The notifications hit me like a physical wave. The phone vibrated so hard against the plywood desk it nearly rattled off the edge. 47 messages, 12 missed calls. It had begun. The digital siege. It started early, 7:15 a.m. A text from Natalie. Where are you? The boys are awake and I have a collab call in 20 minutes. 7:30 a.m. Natalie again. This isn't funny, Ashley. Mom says you're not in your room. Where did you go? 8 a.m. Mom, honey, please pick up. Natalie is really stressed. We can talk about the schedule if it's too much. Just come back. 9 a.m. Dad, you are being incredibly selfish. We open our home to you, and this is how you repay us, by disappearing. I scrolled through them emotionless. I was an anthropologist observing a tribe in collapse. They weren't worried about my safety. They weren't asking if I was okay. They were panicking about the schedule. The infrastructure of their lives had vanished, and they were scrambling. I didn't respond to a single one. I let the little red bubbles pile up on the icon. Every unread message was proof of my value. Every angry voicemail was a testament to how much labor I had been silently absorbing. Then around noon, the tone shifted. The anger turned into chaos. A video message came through from Natalie. I almost didn't watch it. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I clicked play. The video opened with a shot of the pristine white kitchen in the glass house. Except it wasn't white anymore. It was purple. Vibrant, violent purple. It was dripping from the cabinets. It was pooling on the quartz countertops. It was splattered across the ceiling like a crime scene. In the middle of the frame stood the family dog, a golden retriever now looking like a grape popsicle. And behind the island, the triplets were screaming. Natalie turned the camera on herself. Her hair was wild. She had purple smoothie smeared across her cheek. She was hyperventilating. I tried to make them smoothies, she screamed into the phone. I just turned my back for 1 second to answer the door, and they took the lid off. It's everywhere, Ashley. It's on the new sofa. Dad is going to kill me. She panned back to the living room. There, on the $5,000 white sectional, was a massive soaking purple stain. The Blueberry Massacre. You did this, she shrieked. If you were here, you would have been watching them. You abandoned us. The video ended. I sat in the quiet of the bunker and watched it again. This is the world without you. We often fear that if we leave, we won't be missed. We fear that people will just move on, that we are replaceable. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the balls drop. I had spent my life catching them before they hit the ground, making everyone else look competent while I exhausted myself. Now I was letting gravity do its work. That purple stain wasn't a tragedy. It was a receipt. It was visual proof that my presence had value and my absence had a cost. My absence was the loudest thing in that house. The chaos wasn't an accident. It was the natural state of their lives without my unseen labor holding back the tide. Seeing that stain soaking into the expensive fabric didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel expensive. I was about to put the phone away when a direct message popped up on Instagram. It wasn't from my family. It was from a handle I recognized vaguely, Natalie's former nanny, Sarah. Hey, the message read. I saw Natalie's story about the smoothie disaster. Karma moves fast. I hesitated, then typed back. You saw it. Yeah, she replied immediately. Listen, I don't know if you know this, but I didn't quit. Natalie fired me the morning you moved in. She told me her sister was taking over for free, so my services were redundant. I stared at the screen. I had suspected that, of course. It aligned with the timeline. But the next message made the blood freeze in my veins. But that's not the worst part, Sarah wrote. I overheard your dad talking to Natalie when he wrote my final severance check. He told her that since she was saving $3,000 a month on my salary, she needed to pay him $500 a month in rent to cover the wear and tear the triplets were causing on the house. He said, "If Ashley is doing the labor for free, we might as well monetize the overhead." I read the words 3 times. My father, Richard, the man who had sat at the head of the table and lectured me about family stepping up, the man who had looked at me with disappointment when I asked for basic respect. He wasn't just enabling the exploitation, he was brokering it. He had looked at his unemployed daughter desperate for a safe harbor, and he hadn't seen a child in need. He had seen an arbitrage opportunity. He was leasing me to my sister and collecting a commission. I didn't feel sad. Sadness is for when you lose something you hope to get back. I felt the cold metallic snap of a lock falling into place. The last tether of guilt I had been holding onto the idea that I owed them for the room evaporated. It was replaced by a professional icy fury. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a disgruntled subcontractor who had just discovered an embezzlement scheme in the C-suite. "Thank you for telling me," I typed to Sarah. "Seriously." I closed Instagram. I opened my laptop again. The blue light of the screen felt like war paint. I pulled up the spreadsheet I had made earlier, the cost of love. The one calculating the $4,500 value of my labor. I added a new line item at the bottom, management fee divided by kickback recovery. Then I opened a template for a formal invoice. I didn't use a cutesy font. I used standard corporate Arial. I typed out the header invoice number 001 to Richard and Natalie from Ashley. Subject termination of services and settlement of accounts. Date effective immediately. I listed the charges clearly. Item 1, consultation on domestic labor value, calculated at 45 hours a week at market rate. Total $4,500. Item 2, breach of implied contract. $1,000. Item 3, discovery of financial misconduct, specifically the kickback scheme recovery. $500. The total due came to $6,000. Payment terms. Due upon receipt. I saved it as a PDF. I attached the spreadsheet showing the market rate calculations. I attached a screenshot of the conversation with Sarah, highlighting the part about the $500 rent kickback. I opened the family group chat. It was currently a graveyard of unread messages from them, begging me to return. I didn't write a long emotional paragraph about how they had broken my heart. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't ask why they did it. In business, you don't ask why the other party breached the contract. You just enforce the penalties. I typed, "Since we are discussing the value of contributing to the household, here is the bill for the reality check. I am resigning from the position of family doormat effective immediately. Do not contact me unless it is to confirm payment." I hit send. The message bubbled up on the screen. Delivered. Then I closed my laptop, crossed my arms, and waited. I knew exactly what would happen next. The silence wouldn't last long. When you hit people in their wallet and their ego simultaneously, they don't text. They panic. It took exactly 11 minutes. My phone rang. It was Dad. I declined it. It rang again instantly. "Natalie." Declined. "Mom." Declined. Then a text from Dad popped up. The tone had shifted from angry to desperate. "We are coming over. We know you're at Blake's studio. We need to settle this face to face." I didn't run. I didn't hide. I stood up, walked to the heavy steel door of the bunker, and unlocked it. I stepped out onto the concrete loading dock, looking down at the empty parking lot. I stood there, arms crossed, breathing in the cool, industrial air. I was ready. 20 minutes later, my father's luxury SUV pulled into the lot. They all piled out. Dad looked tired, his corporate armor cracking. Mom was holding a casserole dish covered in foil, the universal symbol of a Midwestern apology, the apology lasagna. Natalie looked defeated, her designer sweatsuit, stained with what I hoped was just blueberry. They marched toward the loading dock. I stayed where I was looking, down at them. Ashley Mom started lifting the lasagna like a peace offering. "We brought dinner. Let's just go inside and talk." "No," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You're not coming inside." "This has gone too far," Dad barked, trying to regain control. "Sending invoices, accusing me of taking money. It was a business arrangement to help your sister manage her finances. It was a scheme," I corrected him. "You sold me out for $500 a month, Dad. You leased me to Natalie like a piece of equipment." Natalie flinched. "I didn't know he was going to charge me rent," she mumbled. I was drowning, Ash. I needed help." "Then you should have asked for help," I said. "You shouldn't have set a trap. You fired a paid employee because you thought you could own me. You thought I had no value because I didn't have a job. But you learned today exactly what my value is." I pointed to the purple stain on Natalie's shirt. That stain, that's the cost of my absence. And it's going to get more expensive every single day I'm not there. We can fix this, Mom pleaded. Please, come home. We'll rework the schedule. I'm not negotiating, I said. I resigned. The invoice was just to show you the math. I don't want your money, and I don't want your room. Where will you go? Dad asked, his voice, losing its edge, fear creeping in. I'll figure it out, I said, just like I always do. But I won't be your overhead anymore. I turned my back on them. I heard Mom start to cry. I heard Dad sputter something about being reasonable. I walked back into the bunker and pulled the heavy steel door shut. The latch clicked with a sound of absolute finality. I locked it. It took me 3 weeks to find a new apartment. It's a studio smaller than the room at my parents' house. It's in an older building with radiator heat that clanks in the night. But it's mine. I pay the rent with a new job, project manager for a logistics firm. I go to work at 9. I come home at 5. And when I come home, it is quiet. I met Natalie for coffee last week. We met on neutral ground, a cafe halfway between us. She looked tired. She told me she hired a new nanny. It's costing her $3,000 a month and she had to cancel the rest of the renovation. Dad stopped the kickback scheme because he was too embarrassed to take money from her when she was actually paying a professional. I miss you, she said, stirring her latte. I'm right here, I said. No, she said. I miss having you there. You miss the help, I said gently. And that's okay. Parenting is hard. But I'm your sister, Natalie, not your staff. If you want a sister, I'm here. If you want an employee, check LinkedIn. She nodded. She didn't argue. We drank our coffee. It wasn't a Hallmark movie ending. It was awkward. It was tentative. But it was real. I went back to my apartment that night and sat in my second-hand armchair. I looked at the walls. They weren't white. They were a soft, warm gray. There were no screams, no demands. No schedules taped to my door. I opened my laptop and deleted the spreadsheet. The balance was 0. Freedom isn't free. It costs you people. It costs you comfort. It costs you the illusion of safety. But as I sat there in the silence, listening to the radiator clank, I realized something. The price of my peace was high, but it was a bargain. Share this video if you've ever had to fire your own family to save your sanity. You aren't alone.